tubers, and that's the thing we know about BreadTube, right? Regardless how you feel about Caleb Walpin, and I say this being one of the people who signed the document that, put forward towards Caleb, right? But the reality is that, his focus on the BreadTube book and how the synthetic left, um, and how they operate is, very suspicious, is very, operates in a very, CIA COINTELPRO type situation, right? And he was proven correct after the Gray Zone put out an article. And the Gray Zone, they were, they proved that the United Kingdom government was funding bread tubers, similar to, I think Sophie from Mars is one of them or whatever, which I've never even really watched her content or what have you. But, it was proven, what Caleb was talking about, that, you have these streamers or whatever that are getting funded by the intelligence agencies, right? Whether it's British intelligence or the CIA or, any of the other imperialist equivalents of the CIA, right? France, Germany, etc. They all have these. Sorry, just clearing my throat here, right? So, because they all clearly, have these funders from the government, from billionaires, people like, George Soros, other billionaire capitalists that tend to be part of the higher end of capital. A lot of these folks tend to be, funding these types of like synthetic left bread tuber elements. So I see no reason why this community with NAFO, as you were talking about, Paul, how this community seems to be, captured by some sort of, it's now centralized to some capacity by some, without for the better lack of better terms, some sort of shadowy figure. We can safely assume that these people are getting funded. Not every individual. A lot of these people are being manipulated to do this based off of propaganda, right? But what's going on the top? What is being centralized? Who is getting funding there? That is the conversation that needs to be had, and why, we can't just treat this like it was, some sort of a completely naturally occurring thing, regardless of how it started. The way they're operating now seems to serve imperialism. That's basically what it gets down to. And, that's the thing I'm noticing at this point, right, with this group of people. But, it's not like this is the first time that there's been a mass mobilization on social media. If you go back to 2011, this was right around Occupy Wall Street, right? There was, the very beginnings of social media, and, you could see propaganda getting pushed on social media through the Arab Springs. We saw that specifically for Gaddafi, in Libya. Gaddafi being, he wanted to start a Pan-African currency. Gaddafi wanted to, create an African Union. He built the largest irrigation system in, if not all of Africa, the whole world, from my understanding. So, this guy that, was incredible for the Libyan people, that actually progressed the economic material conditions for the people of Libya. Whether you want to call him a Marxist socialist or not, he wasn't a Marxist socialist, right? I still think he was a socialist, but that's the propaganda that we saw against Gaddafi on the internet, right? And it wasn't disorganized, but it was organized to a similar capacity to some extent. We saw that with Egypt when, we saw Egypt falling under. Jordan, I believe, was another one of those countries that it faced a bunch of Arab Spring protests, and a lot of it was connected to Twitter specifically. Twitter is a mechanism that the State Department, and not just the United States, but all of the imperialist countries, use as a way to manipulate the population, to think that events are popular, as well as a way to actually mobilize people when the color revolutions are trying to start happening, right? And Egypt especially was one of those cases. Uh, and then there's just also the situations where if propaganda won't work, that's when the government decides, through, if you're not familiar, NATO decided to bomb Libya to smithereens, and kill Gaddafi, and in one of the most brutal ways possible. It was on camera. We saw Gaddafi bloodied, being drugged through the streets. This is exactly what what the U.S. imperialists are about. And this is what we have to remember about Ukraine. The U.S. government right now might be saying, oh, yeah, United States, we're the ally of Ukraine. But we know what happens to allies of Ukraine. When you just do what the U.S. wants, it doesn't turn out good for you. And this is the thing, is like, if you are really this Ukrainian patriot, you want the workers of Ukraine to have better material conditions, you should be arguing in favor of the United States getting their fucking business out of Ukraine and pushing Zelensky to have a peace deal with Vladimir Putin. And that's what, that's exactly what these types of people don't want. That's what these NAFO people don't want. They don't want peace in Ukraine. There's no amount of Ukrainian bodies that they're willing to save from Russian invasion, if they care about this Russian invasion so much, that it isn't about saving these Ukrainian workers. It's not about saving the Ukrainian people. They don't care about the Ukrainians. They don't care about the Roma people. They don't care about ethnic Russians in the region. I mean, we saw that with 14 years of the Donbass republics being blown up into smithereens, right? We know what these people are supporting, and they know what they're supporting. We've seen these people, wrapped around on poles. We've seen, videos. I'm not going to get graphic here, the extreme details, but paint covered faces with toxic paints that make people lose their vision. We've seen, the brutalization, the harm that, in both a physical and emotional sense that is being done against, not just Roma people, not just ethnic Russians, but even Ukrainian people that would try to take a piece of bread so they could be able to feed themselves in the middle of a war, right? Like that is one of the most pathetic excuses I hear a lot from the NAFO motherfuckers. It's like, oh, what these people were stealing, and it's a war zone. It's a war zone. So you think it's okay for these Ukrainian people, like the very people you say that you care about, you think it's okay for them to be strapped onto a pole and beaten and in cases sexually abused, permanently having their vision being lost just because they stole a piece of bread or they stole a little bit of food or whatever so they could feed themselves or feed their children or whatever. I mean, God's sakes, they have like 10-year-old, 12-year-old children also strapped to these poles with their clothes ripped off and everything. Like, these people are disgusting. And the fact that you have these people that legitimately want to support this, they think this is a good thing. It just shows the character of who these people are. And this is part of the reason why, this is why I have argued that the Democratic Party is more in line with fascists than the Republican Party, because who are the people that you see on a consistent basis, like average, MAGA Trump people are the ones that are saying that we shouldn't be sending weapons, billions of dollars to these Ukrainian Nazis, right? Think about what you want about the politicians themselves, but the voters do not want this. Every time that I talk to a MAGA Republican here in the Pittsburgh general area, you know, everyone's like, no, why are we sending billions of dollars off to, you know, that? But then what do I see with the Democrats? The voters, the actual voters. We're not even talking about the politicians. The actual voters of the Democratic Party. There'll be a few that might say, oh yeah, I'm anti-war, I don't want to send the money. But the majority of them have a Ukrainian flag in their window of their house. A majority of them have a Ukrainian flag post up on their Facebook. The majority of them have, you know, like they're in favor of the killings of these Russians, as the Roma people, as well as Ukrainians living in Ukraine. They're okay with it because Putin bad. He's Hitler. You know, yeah, that's the common thing. It's all okay because it's Putler. You know, so that's one of the most disgusting things, in my opinion, about this NATO community. And you know, regardless of how, again, how natural it might have been, how these gamers got together and, you know, became part of this community, is irrelevant now because they have tarnished their image to be in support of Ukraine and the Azov Battalion and the right sector. And as far as I'm concerned, also Vladimir Savinsky, because he is one that refuses to have peace with Putin, who refuses to accept the independence of, you know, all of the Donbass republics. They refuse is to actually care about the material conditions of his own people. You know, I just noticed here we have Flame of Liberation, who just came in. I don't know if you'd like to speak, but I'd like to actually send a request to you if you would like to speak. Speak if you feel like it. If you don't, I understand, my friends. But I know that you have an incredible perspective on everything that's been going on. I've seen your videos, so if you'd like to speak, feel free to go right ahead.
Just wanted to mention that all those people, they trying to knock into my account, and I'm not going to talk to you because you're not representing your identity. You're representing some sort of group or unity, but I prefer to communicate with people who are represented by their names, so by their uh, personal agenda, not the community agenda. You're not you're part of group, but I don't want to be to arguing with the whole group. If you want to talk with me, just use your own account, but not this Shiba Inu. Use a pig with some joke in the name. No, guys, sorry, I'm not going to add you.
No, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, uh, I obviously cannot trust any of these NAFO people that are sending requests consistently, especially this Ellie person. I've seen your request probably like 40 different times at this point. You guys just come to terms with the fact I'm not going to let y'all talk. This is not your conversation. You're just watching it. But with that being said, you know, Flame of Liberation, you accepted the speech. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
I am fabulous.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say on this because I actually don't know much about what this NAFO thing is. I just saw this like just recently. I don't know what the deal is with it, so I'm just here to basically learn more about it. I guess the only thing I'll say is, I mean, if it's just regular random trolls, like basically coming out in support of like NATO on their own initiative, I mean, that's pretty sad. Like, how sad do you have to be to like come out in support of like this? The biggest establishment military industrial complex thing. Like, how lame do you have to be to want to like waste your time doing that? Anyway, that's all I have to say, really. I'm just here basically to find out more about what the hell this thing actually is.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Thank you for speaking your part on there. I absolutely agree with you. It is pathetic to be supporting the war machine of the imperialists, you know. But you know, to be fair, right? As pathetic as it is, let's also remember that the amount of propaganda that exists, you know, I mean, between McCarthyism, COINTELPRO going into the 1960s, you know, and then, you know, MK Ultra and all these other programs meant to desensitize working class people from being politically involved and farther pushing them into poverty. You know, these are the material conditions in which, you know, it's extremely easy to get people to believe in, you know, propaganda in a lot of ways, right? Um, uh, you know, a lot of these folks probably, especially if they're Western and are all native within, you know, Asia, as Comer Paul was talking about. He was talking about basically the how these people originated. Actually, for Flame of Liberation, as well as anyone else who has joined this conversation, I'd love for you, Paul, to actually go back over that if you could.
From what moment exactly? About the participation of those types of communities in other issues, like, I don't know, like sort of discussing Taiwan or Thailand, but for example, it's also related to Thailand protests. I have not too much to add, frankly, because there are those people. Stop requesting for really, guys. Requesting to follow me. I'm not going to look. There's a problem with that because they're not finding the response, the direct response, and they're not clicking with Russians because it's obviously supposed to affect Russian way of thinking, but there is not too much Russian actually supported the war invasion genuinely from their hearts because they're still, and even though this whole Russian propaganda machine working towards the idea that this could have been prevented, blah, blah, blah. It's not the fault of the Ukrainian people or the Russian people, blah, blah, blah. It's mostly related to the conditions which was created by the energy crisis in Europe. And by the way, I'm pretty sure that this whole crisis wouldn't happen if the Nord Stream, say, the second Nord Stream was intact and was run, because though this exchange happened, well, if some of those are really Ukrainians, really, you probably remember about 2006 energy crisis in Ukraine, which when Ukraine starts stealing Russian gas from pipelines. This is probably a moment when it was started in the first place. And the problem is that's a very extremely weak spot for Russia. That's a weak spot in Russian economy because it's mostly reliant on selling natural resources. And if you want to shut down Russia, you need to do something that will affect the amount of resources Russia sells in the first place. And that was a gambit, frankly, because European countries and when United States developed themselves as a source of natural gas, they started to directly affect Eastern European countries to make it worse for Russians to sell gas, to run gas pipelines for all those through those countries. It was a play, and if you need to look into this from the 2006. The problem is that they played in a very sophisticated and very unfair way, supporting, for example, I'm really speaking about so far right elements out there in those countries. Directly in those countries, you can just open the map and find which country is holding the Russian pipelines, and for some reason the arrest happened directly in those countries. We're speaking about OTs, not even the current thing. And then the relationship deteriorated to the degree of direct conflict. It happened. And not really too much Russian people support this conflict, but the sentiment we have. I mean, I am Russian, and I'm sorry it's all happened, but it's not that Russia could have prevented this in the first place because it's happened too long ago. And yes, I blame Putin for failing diplomacy, not in 2021 and not in 2022, but probably in 2006, 2007. Back then, he for some reason this country, the Ukraine, they switched sentiment from being adhered to Russia rather than looking into towards Western countries. That was his fault, but it was 20 years ago, something like that. But currently, I couldn't see how it could be prevented in the first place, especially when exchanges about the Nord Stream 2 started. And you guys, you just ask yourself if you think that Taiwan, as an independent state or country or entity, can make up their minds and do whatever they want because of sovereignty. And Finland and Sweden and Ukraine could make their own decision to join NATO, and because they're sovereign countries. And yes, that's true. Could, for example, Germany, as a sovereign country, make the decision to run gas directly from Russia because they want to trade with Russia, to exchange goods? The good cars, for example, German will build good cars in exchange for natural gas because they're shut down the nuclear plants. That's another story. And still buying the enriched uranium from Russians for those nuclear plants, but they decided to go another way and buy natural gas. But they can't. They don't have enough sovereignty to trade with Russia. And this is where it's all started. And it's also highly related to Baltic states, who are also very subjective in their decision they make. It's very problematic because I don't see the direct political will coming from those states. They really supported one big agenda, even though it's really harmful for them. And we're talking about huge European energy crisis. It's happening because of, well, what? Because of those countries keep supplying weaponry. To do what? To push Russia back to their own territory, and then they assume that Russia restores supply of resources. Well, no, you need to go towards the decision that beneficial for both parties. This is how it works, and this is how you make friends with Russia. And speaking of NATO, you're probably from the 2005, 2006, France, for some reason, France pushing those idea of the European security agenda, which will include Russia and Russia and Ukraine and all the European states. But this means that you need to disband the NATO. But the existence of NATO, why? Why is it in the first place? Because the weak, you need 20 countries to be against very weak and very corrupted and extremely lame Russia. You need those alliances. Well, obviously not, because it's a business project which all the arms in the NATO, it's mostly supplied by the United States corporations. And you see this. That's a problem, and you can't just blame Russia for starting the open fire conflict in 2022. No, it's not. It's not happened this spring, guys. Sorry, get the larger picture. I'm off.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. There's obviously been a track record going back. Oh gosh, I mean, from what you're saying, it goes back farther beyond before 2014. And look, this idea that we should support Ukraine for sovereignty, like you're talking about, it's an imperialist ploy. Because we, support the sovereignty of of Ukraine, we'd logically have to support the sovereignty of Taiwan, Hong Kong, or whatever, what have you, right? And you know, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about with this NAFO originating from kind of, you know, while they were gamers, you know, it was a lot, very right wing energy, you know, that these people were a part of, you know, and you can just kind of see that they, where, you know, the mindset of a lot of these folks within NAFO, you know, really are. You know, these are, if we talk about people that benefit from imperialism, well, obviously, in the context of the West, there's folks who benefit from imperialism, people that are part of the labor aristocracy. But I mean, these are like the labor aristocracies of these other countries. Most of these people, frankly, especially if you can afford, you know, high gaming setups and all that kind of stuff of the, you know, people dumping thousands of dollars in equivalent U.S. currency, you know, these people are clearly, yeah, in a like a financial position that they can realistically, you know, do a lot better. They're paid not to not have solidarity with, you know, not just the working class in their own countries, but the working class globally and the anti-imperialist movement as a whole. So, you know, these are folks that, you know, they're propagandized, but they also are largely in material conditions that allow them to take in consideration to support, you know, forces that otherwise would be oppressing them, you know, are only supporting them to benefit themselves in the short term. And again, this is why I say, you know, Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons, you know, or his nuclear program, I guess specifically, right? And you know, what did the United States do with NATO? They bombed Gaddafi in Libya into smithereens. You know, this is why Kim Jong Un in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is not making that same decision, right? But these are also countries in which, you know, they do the revolution. You know, it wasn't like the situation with Egypt, Arab Springs. It wasn't, you know, like the material conditions we see in a lot of these countries that the U.S. imperialists and the British imperialists push color revolutions, and so, you know, just things to kind of like, you know, sink your teeth into and think about, you know, and I'm speaking to all the other people that clearly have their little dog profile pictures as well. You know, you guys have to understand that the imperialist will, when it is no longer beneficial to, you know, make sure that you have better material conditions, they will take it away. We're seeing that with the labor aristocracy in the United States. You know, from personal experience, you know, I saw my father. He was in the construction union, construction supervisor. You know, he made anywhere from 150,000 to $250,000 a year, depending on how much overtime he worked or whatever. And you know, he was part of that well-paid labor aristocracy. And then the housing market crashed in '07, and he almost lost the house. You know, he got in a bunch of credit card debt. You know, he had to put a second mortgage out on the house. You know, and he ended up having to leave the union, and because he couldn't get it work through it anymore because of the housing market crash, and that ultimately led to him, you know, having to change his whole career. You know, he's 62, 63 years old, and he's working two, you know, and there's a lot of Americans that, you know, used to be living financially comfortably and just aren't anymore because it doesn't benefit the imperialists to pay a labor aristocracy. So, you know, you guys can, you know, laugh and meme it up right now, but, you know, just know that when the U.S. imperialists do not find you useful anymore, you're not going to be able to afford your gaming setup. You're not going to be able to afford all the luxuries that you have, because your wealth is going to be extracted and it's going to be sent to the top of the Western imperialist hegemony. So I guess keep doing the decisions you're doing. Marxist Cosmus LaRoucheist, he would like to speak, and disagreements aside that I might have with this individual, no, he's definitely a comrade in the regards of against NATO and NATO. So introduce yourself, my friends.
Is this Yankee Tankie?
Yes, sir. Yankee Tankie.
Yankee Tankie. When will you endorse the World Land Bridge?
Say that question again, my friend.
When will you endorse the World Land Bridge, Yankee Tankie?
I support a World Land Bridge. I guess this is the moment you discover that I endorse that. I if disagreements aside with the Schiller's Institute, there is a lot of industrial programs I'm in favor of, which includes the World Land Bridge, includes high-speed rail, includes Fusion City, which if I understand is their thing. There's a lot of stuff I support from the Schiller's Institute, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations, right? You're going to make political allies that you're going to have disagreements with, right? I don't agree with everything the Lelouch said, but
Read the works of Chairman LaRouche.
does he refer to himself as chairman? I'm actually curious.
No, I'm just joking.
Okay.
I'm absolutely kidding, Yankee Tankie.
I kind of figured as much, but I just kind of wanted to see. No, I mean,
The Yankee Tankie, have you read any of LaRouche's works? You know Sergei Glaziev of the Esbork Club, an economic advisor to Putin, recently said that LaRouche was the most important thinker of the last decade. And again, he just made a celebratory speech of LaRouche's 100th birthday a few
Who is
days ago.
this? Who is this that said
Sergei
this?
Glaziev.
Sergei Glaziev. I'll look that up. Yeah.
Yes, he's a important Russian person.
yeah, I mean, look, I don't have to agree with absolutely everything that any organization or individual pushes forward, but when they put for something forward that actually benefits the working class, I mean, there's no reason to, argue about contradictions that, don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, right? This is what
So do you support a modern Glass-Steagall, Yankee Tankie?
yes, but I would go farther than what they advocate. I believe the banks should be nationalized and controlled by the working class of the country.
That's what LaRouche talks about with the Are you familiar with Hamiltonian credit systems in the National Bank of America?
I'm familiar with the National Bank of America, but I'm not familiar with the rest.
Does that
Well, you
leave?
should read Hamilton, friend. You should read Hamilton.
Does that leave space open for any private banking?
It's a lot like the Chinese system. You know, you would have to read Hamilton and read some of the stuff that we're putting out there. But it would be a lot like the Chinese system, and in fact, a lot of the Chinese people are actually influenced explicitly by Hamilton. They write about it.
Does it though allow private
And
banking, or
LaRouche.
would it all be state?
No, it would be a mixed system.
Okay, so there'd be some private. Yeah.
I'm not.
It's not directly
Sorry,
okay.
go ahead.
I'm entitled to talk. I'm entitled to talk about the Chinese banking system because it's something I got salary for. Yeah, it's not directly. Look, there's a very strange way to talk about the private or nationalized banking because you have to receive loans from central bank, so it's not really your you're not really possessing the borrowed money. So it's even though it's called private banking, it remains inside this political economic system which banks remain. Look, if you need to understand the Chinese financial system, you need to first you need to speak Chinese Mandarin and read Mandarin. Second one, you need to read those the guy. His name is Chen Yun. He was who he was. He was a financial advisor of Deng Xiaoping, who was Deng Xiaoping never actually did financial or economical reforms. He was all about politics, but the financial part was on Chen Yun, and he created the concept of this birdcage economy. So that's the idea that we have a free, open, whatever it is, market economy, but we have a state on top of this economy. But everything else remains the same. But the idea that the government, whatever system it is, whatever it's selected politician, but we remain the control over a financial system in case of. And probably since then, we've never seen the big financial crisis, economic crisis in China only because of that. And even right now, what's happening with Evergrande and the slowly deflating the not popping up real estate market in China. And yes, there is a crisis in place, and they are controlling it right now, not making this 2008 crisis like it happened with Lehman Brothers in the United States. Here, you remember. So you need to look after this guy who called Chen Yun. I probably can throw the Chinese Hanzi characters in the chat. I see some Chinese folks in here. Look, I wanted to say something else about this NATO situation. I'm going to advise you guys with all the Shiba Inu portraits, because the situation is fucked up. It's not going to end very soon. And if you really want to do something useful, I advise you to take care about the Ukrainian refugees. I see the guys who's contacting me constantly and trying to say me that there's all the Ukrainians in those fellows, and you see, it's a contradicts with my personal experience, because I do have exchanges directly with Ukrainians, and we are on the common ground with a lot of them. But this won't end soon. Sorry, guys. And if you're really rooting for Ukrainian people, not for Ukrainian state in its current state, but for Ukrainian people, for mere folks who are probably dying because it's a war, it's a real war. So yes, donate for refugees. I don't know who's collecting money, who helping, who hosting refugees. I personally knew folks in United Kingdom who hosting Ukrainian refugees. Help them, help people, help mere Ukrainians, whatever they are. I acknowledge their right to hate Russian people. They hate me personally. I'm fine with it. I'm really fine with it. I haven't born for everyone to like me. I'm not a K-pop singer. After all, what strikes the most when you're really supporting the Ukrainian state, with all in really fucked up state, but not really supporting Ukrainian people with all your deeds, with all your agenda. You're just promoting those ideas to help to states to fight. If you're really into this, donate, host them, support them, donate directly to them. There's a lot of Ukrainians collecting money out there, struck in Europe, because not really all the nations fond of this in amount of refugees, and they need help. Help them. And me personally, I'm speaking from perspective of Russians. I'm fine with it. I'm great with it. Help them. But you won't stop the war with all those user peaks and trashing other Russians or shutting down Russian discourse. No, it won't help. Sorry. But yeah, do something useful. Do something helpful. It's really worth it.
Mr. Yankee Tankie, and I don't know what your name is because it's in the Chinese letterings, but I want to make
he goes by Paul.
NAFO scum.
I'm Paul. That's almost my real name. I just prefer to call, for English speakers, I'm Paul. Just Paul.
Okay. I think we should make a message to these NAFO scumbags in the chat.
Well, one of the things I've been kind of saying, You guys that are part of NAFO or whatever, you know, you're picking the wrong side of history, and it's going to burn you. I mean, there's just no way around it. You're going to get burned. The imperialists always burn you. This has been the history of imperialists, you know, since imperialism
Mr.
was
Yankee Tankie.
imperialism.
Mr. Yankee Tankie.
Yes,
They
sir.
don't want to hear that. What they need to hear is that a new paradigm is rising, a new future, a new America, and these NAFO trolls are going to the gulag. They will be re-educated in classical culture, and they will be sent to mine for the materials to build the World Land Bridge.
Okay,
You
guys.
know,
These NAFO
I'm not.
trolls have a good future ahead of them, man. They're gonna learn a lot. They're gonna be able to read lots of books. They're gonna be able to, you know, contribute to mankind by building the World Land Bridge. It's very exciting.
You know, I'm not going to say that and necessarily I'm going to argue those points, but I will say this much that there is need to be a certain level of re-education in society. You know, the hyper individualism that we see within society, and these folks with NAFO are obvious evidence of that.
The
You
Yankee
know,
Tankie, can I say something?
sure.
I'm not sure that I don't think that you shouldn't be in the re-education camp.
You think I should be in the re-education camp?
Yeah, I think you should.
Out of
Are you
curiosity,
are
why do
you
you
high
feel that
right now,
way?
by the way, Mr. Marxist Cosmos Larouchist? Are you high by any chance? It sounds like you might be.
Sir, that was very rude of you to claim.
Well, that's a very you seem very giggly, and you're making some comments about Yankee Tankie that don't make a lot of sense.
I will let it go because it's not that deep. Like,
No, Yankee
but
Tankie.
mhm.
Why do you go around begging people for money, man?
Well, that's something that I'm no longer in a position to need to do. So you're not going to be seeing that happening. Luckily, the GoFundMe has put me in the position finally that I can pretty much get my shit together, so to speak. With that being said, you know, I was doing what was necessary for my material conditions,
Okay. Well, I wouldn't
and
see you succeed, Mr. Yankee Tankie, but the thing is, you know, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna devote your life to? You know, things have changed a lot within the past couple of months. What do you want to do?
well, in the short term, it's about increasing my own material conditions. You know, I am trying to basically obtain the house I'm living in, you know, get electricity, things of that nature, so I can basically be functionable in that regard. Long term, it's a mixture, right? I mean, obviously, I'm going to be doing some online content more down the road here. You know, I'm kind of breaking my break right now, doing this whole thing, but I do plan on, you know, producing content in that nature. I'm also going to be probably involved with some local organizing within the Pittsburgh general area at some point. So that's kind of where I'm sitting in that regard.
Organizing for what?
Uh, basically, the idea is I'm going to be starting what is the triple PL, the Pittsburgh Progressive Populist League. It's trying to bring together communists and MAGA folks and other types of populist progressives and try to find common ground to fight for the material conditions in our community. One of the things I'm going to try to do, I am going to be trying to basically put together a program to advocate for Allegheny County. That's the county that Pittsburgh is located in the middle of, for a expansion for the T, which is Pittsburgh. It's their very limited light rail and subway system that exists. It should be expanded. It should be built upon. I'm going to be trying to talk to the right folks to try to draw that out. So that's one of the things in the context of material things that we're going to try to do. From here, it's still a long road. This is very far away before I end up actually going forward with these things, but I got to rely on myself right now, focus on my own material conditions, and then ultimately, at the end of the day, excuse me, I'm going to, get back into the groove of what I was trying to do before I joined the CPI, just in a different way with the new knowledge that I have obtained over the last few years, last 2 years or so. Let me see who this one individual is real quick. Wobble Wowzer.
Okay,
You got
sorry.
like 27 followers.
While we're not on topic, I just want to say goodbye and have a nice one to everyone. I never speak in that type with that amount of listeners, so I'm glad you hear me out, but you haven't had voice. So anyway, sorry guys to screw you up. Have a nice one, and glad you exist and fight for your ideals. I will
Thank you.
succeed. You will succeed at some point, believe me.
Well,
Very nice
thank
meeting
you.
you. Очень приятно.
Yes, Paul was a definitely great contributor to the conversation today. We're very off topic at the moment. It's kind of go round back to where we were. We were talking about NAFO. We're talking about Ukraine in general. And there's this individual here that is requesting to speak. They seem relatively new. They popped up in July, and there's only one person that I'm familiar with that follows them, and that they follow me. Yeah, I'll take a risk. I'll add this person, and because the profile was made in July, so it's still relatively new. And we'll see. I will definitely make sure that they are not trying to join to disrail the conversation. You are now able to speak, Wobble, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yep, hiya. How is everyone?
I am good.
Cool. So what is NAFO? It's a good question. I'd like to start just by picking you up on something that you said earlier, about people that are being tied up, children that are being tied up and having their faces painted. Was it just me? Did you notice how the paint on all the different people was exactly the same? It was like a weird dark green paint. Did you notice that, Yankee Tankie?
Yes, I believe it's a specific chemical agent that is in the paint
Yep.
that has been shown to cause blindness, from my understanding.
Do you know what the paint's for?
To my knowledge, it is some sort of way to shame the person. No. But you seem more familiar with it.
Yeah. In the early days of the war, especially in Kiev, I've got friends in Kiev, so I'm talking from their experiences. Okay, so the situation at the time was that the Russian army had encircled Kiev. The police were helping the military. They were clearing streets, sorting out curfews, all that sort of thing. Obviously, they'd just been invaded by their neighbour, who massively outpowers them and outnumbers them. So they're calling civilians up to take up arms. Anyone with any experience was being asked. You probably heard that. So what was happening was people within Ukraine were using this paint, and they were using it to mark infrastructure. Now, it wasn't just power infrastructure, energy infrastructure, sewerage, water, clean water. They were marking residential buildings. Now, this paint that they use. Now you'll see the same paint on the same. That you'll see the same paint. It's a military paint. Basically, when a plane is overhead using a certain lens filter on a camera, it lights up like a Christmas tree. The Ukrainians had no other option but to tie these people up. When they caught them, they tied them up with cling film, with police tape, with anything that they could get their hands on. And they did that because they had no way of dealing with them. They were left there for the authorities. The Ukrainians phoned the authorities and said where this particular person was. And you've obviously got to bear in mind that some of the buildings that this paint was used on by Russian separatists in Ukraine.
I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. Can you elaborate what you mean by what they had no other? You're saying they had
No other.
Go over that again. I'm a little confused. What do you mean you're saying they had to do this to civilians?
Well, it was either let them get on with it, so they could mark up targets, so they could mark up civilian infrastructure for Russian military to target. Does that seem okay with you?
I don't understand what you mean.
Okay,
like, what's the necessity of using civilians as targets?
No. They're not using civilians as targets. The civilians who were being tied up were Russian separatists and government infiltrators.
No, they were Ukrainian. They were Ukrainian citizens, most of whom I think don't even identify as Russians.
Where have you heard that?
Well, if you look at the areas, this is all over Ukraine.
No, I'm asking you where you heard it. I'm asking you where you heard it because I've spoken to people that are actually there.
Where I've seen this is all over, all of the videos posted everywhere that everyone's seen, posted by all.
So you haven't actually spoken to people. And I've actually had a conversation with somebody who's there.
So you think this person that you spoke with has an understanding of all the cases where this has happened all over the country?
She has an understanding of 3 cases in Kiev where this person was caught with this paint and he was marking energy infrastructure. He marked a 14-story building that got struck with a cruise missile. It was a residential building where families live. It wasn't a military target. That's why that was happening. So I just thought I'd clear that up.
Was it actually?
Pardon, was it what? Sorry?
I will say that I do not buy that the stories that you're telling me are true.
This guy's a British agent. Get him out.
No,
get
him out.
The guy clearly doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. We're going to remove him.
Hang on.
No, we're not holding on.
Yeah, you're basically just justifying atrocities against civilians. I mean, just blatant atrocities against civilians just because it's the Kiev regime. Mm-hmm. And the funny part is that it's not even against Russians. It's against their own civilians. It just shows how low these pro-NATO apologists are. You know, they're willing to justify any and all atrocities by the Kiev regime.
Yeah, most definitely. You know, you have so many people that are, I mean, effectively getting very close to Holocaust denial, you know, I mean, which is really on course with a lot of the people that would support Nazis, ironically. But with that being said, though, we have this guy here. He looks like he's legitimate, so I'm going to allow him to speak. Hey, how are you doing today? Would you like to introduce yourself, my friend?
I am here not because of NAPO, bro. NAPO, who gives a shit, right? This is like it's like stupid dog people on the internet. No one gives a shit. I am here because there is a man in this space who's been avoiding me for like 10 years. I don't know why, but he does not accept the fact that Saddam was an e-girl sin.
Saddam has nothing to do with this.
He does. He
So
does. He does. He does. He does. You use the same talking point
yeah, I
as the
guess
Ukrainians. You use the same talking points.
the only thing he has to do with this is that Russia supported him and the Soviet Union supported him. That's the only similarity, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, like during who? During who? During the
And
revisionist
that
rule?
the
During the revisionists?
and that the separatist groups against Saddam that tried to claim there were all these fake um, make these fake claims are very similar to the Ukrainian
No,
separatists, and they
they're
want to
similar
say
to
that they're
Donbass,
being
aren't
oppressed.
they? They're an
They're
ethnic
being
minority.
oppressed. They're
They're
being
an ethnic
supposedly
minority.
oppressed by the evil Arab Saddam, just like how the Ukrainians are claiming that they're oppressed by the
No,
evil
it's
Russians.
more like the ethnic Russians who are being oppressed in Ukraine, isn't it not?
Not at all, because the people that you're supporting are Western backed, while Saddam was
Saddam was
Soviet
also
backed.
Western backed. The Westerners lied to all of these ethnic groups in Iraq. We all know this.
Really, so that's why
Everyone,
there were
everyone in the
thousands
region
of
thinks so.
Soviet. That's why there were thousands of Soviet advisors in Iraq,
Yeah,
right?
the Soviets also funded Kurdish separatism in other countries. So what's your point?
Yeah, they supported the Kurds when it was a different government. They
Yeah,
supported
yeah,
they
and
supported Saddam in
yeah,
putting
who
down the
supported
Kurdish
Saddam?
separatists.
Who supported Saddam? The
Anyway, that has nothing to
revisionists.
do with
No, no,
this.
it's the revisionists. You
We're
can't
here
be like
to
the Soviets
oppose.
supported this and that. You can't avoid this.
Yeah, no, I'm drawing the connection because you want to bring up something irrelevant. So I'm
No,
just
it's
pointing
pretty
out that you're
relevant. No, it's pretty
basically taking the
relevant. You're
pro-Ukrainian
doing,
position.
no, you're
You're trying
using,
to
no, shut up, listen.
demonize the leader that
You're
was
doing,
overthrown by the United
no, you're
States.
doing the card. Zelensky is a Jew, therefore there's no ethnic problem in Ukraine. You're doing the same analogy. You can't really do this thing. I've seen you do this like a million times.
No,
Kurds
they
help
found they
Saddam,
banned
therefore
Russian. You
there's
can't
no
even
ethnic
speak
issue.
Russian in Ukraine.
We all know what's happening in Ukraine,
Okay.
bro. You don't gotta avoid me, yo. Like,
I don't know what you're talking about. I've been avoiding you for 10 years. I don't even know who in the hell you are.
you know who I am.
So
You called me a
this
Westoid.
page,
You called
this
me. I'm
page,
from the region, bro. You called me a Westoid, and you're
this
like a
page,
white boy. You're a white boy. You're gonna call me a West.
this page hasn't even been around for 10,
I,
10
I'm,
years.
I'm,
So I
I'm
don't
being,
even know what you're talking about.
you don't get it. I'm being very like, I'm doing comedy a bit, but I'm also being serious because you've been avoiding me for
Yeah,
a while.
it must be comedy. It must be
Yeah,
comedy.
yeah, like your page, bro. Your MS page
It
memes,
must
bro.
be comedy. Yeah.
Bro.
Anyhow, I think this person, sadly, we were gonna have to kick him
Why?
because he,
Why?
yeah,
What do you have?
appears to have
What do you
some
have
sort
beef
of
with?
vendetta against Flame of Liberation.
I
Um,
mean, let me ask you this in all seriousness and all honesty. What's your point right now? You want to discuss this with me? What are you getting at?
I already kicked him, my friend.
Okay. All right. Maybe if you're still
Yankee
listening,
Tankie, do
or if
you
you can hear me,
endorse
send
the
me a
Red
message
MAGA
and figure
Army?
out what your deal is. If you're legitimate, you actually want to have a good faith discussion on something, we can maybe set that up. But honestly, you're coming in here acting like I've been avoiding you for 10 years. I don't even know who you are. So, anyway.
There you go. Uh,
Yankee
uh,
Tankie, do you endorse the Red MAGA Army?
I will say that I am more convinced by the argument than I've ever been before, but I'm not ready to full out endorse it yet. But I do agree that we need to reach out to MAGA, which is part of what my plans are personally here in the Pittsburgh area. But with that being said, it's a little off topic at the moment. I just would like to focus on why we started this space in the first place.
Who do
With
you think is the main target of NAFO? It's the Red MAGA Army.
For sure, I agree that they're definitely a target. There's no denying that. And I stand in solidarity in that context, right? As well as the anti-imperialist struggle, as well as standing in solidarity with anyone that's being attacked.
Are you going to stand in solidarity with the leftists, or are you going to stand in solidarity with Red MAGA Army? Tell us now, Yankee
Well,
Tankie.
first of all, what do you mean by leftists? Because there's a lot of bullshit going on right now with, oh, leftist this, leftist that. The synthetic left are fake leftists. Communists are true leftists. And there is something to the term left and leftist. So I just want to make that clear. If you're a communist, you are a leftist, but not in the sense of the synthetic left because they're fake left. They're not left.
Do you endorse the Red MAGA Army, or are you going to stand with the leftists?
Bro, what
What
is
does
up
that
I'm
even
going
mean?
to
dictators?
The Red
stand in
MAGA Army.
What is
solidarity
up
with.
dictators?
I'm
What is
going.
up dictators?
I'm going to stand in solidarity with any force that actually wants to move us towards, a better country to take down imperialism, etc.
Why did y'all kick Haters? He was coming here to debate Flimma Liberation, who's been dodging him.
I do not know what the personal conflict
I'm not
is.
part of this. I'm not part of this discussion to have a debate about Saddam right now. This isn't about Saddam. This is about NATO.
Nobody gives a fuck about NATO.
I mean, arguably Haas does, but you know,
Really. So you're telling me that the issue of Saddam, an argument about Saddam, is more relevant than the situation of NATO right now? Okay, well, I mean, that's interesting because that kind of tells where your priorities are at right now.
Dude, you're dodging a debate against Haterists.
now I do not know what the personal conflict is between this individual and Flame Liberation. However, this space is specifically to talk about NATO and NAFO. So I'd like to request folks to stick on topic.
Just block NAFO. Run the fucking Sequitur app and block them, and there you go. Problem solved. Like,
well, I mean, we're talking about trying to block like thousands of people. Yes, I mean, it's impossible.
Yes, no, it's not. You can, dude. I have nearly 100,000 people blocked. It's not hard to do it.
I mean, frankly, I don't have the time to sit down and block each end of these people.
You literally just use the Sequitur app and it blocks all of them. And whatever the fuck, I think it's called Sequitur, I think.
Right, but aren't we trying to fight the propaganda war online, correct?
They mass report. They don't.
You know the NAFO fucking dumbasses aren't gonna fucking listen to us.
It's not about them listening to us. It's about...
Most of them are bots. Did you see
yes, a lot of them are bots, and I actually would like to make our own bot farms to compete with them.
What the fuck? We don't need bots.
Have you seen the recent study? Like, at least half of these Ukraine supporters, they're bots. Like, it's been proven.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that for the case of propaganda fighting the information war, I think it was for a purpose to combat it instead of just trying to block them because they're still there, right? And they're still...
But you're not reaching out to these people, so why does it matter?
Because we're not trying to reach out to these people. We're trying to reach out to other people that see this stuff and buy into the propaganda. That's the idea of information warfare, right?
You need to directly tap into MAGA, not debate NAFTA all day. If you're debating bots, just show MAGA that they're just bots.
It's not about actually trying to debate them in particular. It's actually about spreading propaganda that counters their propaganda.
Why do you need to not have them banned to do that? And also, why are we trying to do fucking propaganda? We don't need to do propaganda. We have the winning ideas. We just fucking put them out. We're not doing fucking propaganda and rhetoric. We're actually
don't communists generally call what they are doing propaganda?
Hold on. What the hell is the Progressive Populist League? What the hell is that?
The Pittsburgh Progressive Populist League, which is not formed yet. It's an idea, but the idea is to reach out to MAGA people, to reach out to other, populists generally, as well as other communists, and try to bring them together within our community.
I'll tell you how to do this, but first bring on Voidburn. Bring on Voidburn, and we'll explain to you how to do this. Bring him on.
He's been kicked, so there's no way to bring him on.
No, he's right there.
He's right there.
Oh, Voidburn. Oh, different dude. I thought we were talking about the guy that was debating
bring on
Flame.
Voidburn. Bring him up.
Okay.
He wants to tell you why you're wrong. He thinks you're wrong about the propaganda.
We need to engage with the NAFO fuckers in order to continue to spread propaganda and information warfare. But here's the thing. Most of the time, these individuals don't even engage with you honestly, and they're just going to mass report and get your account shut down. How are you supposed to win the propaganda war and the information warfare if you're not even able to spread information?
Couldn't we just also mobilize to report them in return?
No, just block these fuckers. Don't interact with them.
If you want to win the propaganda war, communists need to... Every communist in every district in America, they need to run for office. Because then it's legally... legally speaking, you won't be able to be banned. You can't ban public officials on...
I mean, they banned Donald Trump, so, I mean, they clearly can.
He's literally... That was there was almost a lawsuit about that. Like that, even then, that was still insane. Like that wasn't supposed to happen.
It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did happen, right? And
You can't ban public.
Trying to do that, and they try to throw
Generally
Donald
speaking,
Trump
you
in
cannot ban
jail.
public figures. You can't.
It's gonna be a civil war. They can't keep throwing all of us in jail just because we have the good ideas. It's gonna lead to a shit.
I mean, to be fair, they're not currently throwing all of us in jail. They do have a few high-ranking people like Julian Assange, for example, locked up. But in the context of like small like streamers or Twitter users or what have you, they're not really
What do
locking
you
us
mean?
up yet.
They're putting information jail. What do you mean they're putting us in information jail? They're banning us. They're kicking us off platforms.
Yeah,
saying
but
we're great
it starts with censorship.
I mean, they're definitely participating in censorship. I agree they're participating in censorship. I'm just saying they're not physically throwing us in jail yet.
But it starts with
State
censorship.
Department is funding the people
You
who
can
put us on a
prevent
hit list, the
censorship.
same hit list as Dario Dugina.
You can prevent
These NAFA
censorship
trolls
by
are from
running for
them.
office. You can prevent censorship
Just
by
one
running for
speaker
office.
at a time, please.
Yeah, I'm telling you how to avoid censorship. You can run for public office. That's how you avoid it.
Okay, that is one way to.
You'll get the blue check, and you'll be a public nominee. Can't ban you.
Also, Yankee, what is it that made you change your tune like towards the infrared community? Because this is quite the 180. I'm curious. I didn't hear your take on this.
Okay, so the reason why I've changed my political position to be neutral in some cases and in favor of the infrared community in other cases is because after being part of the Discord community and talking to a lot of you folks individually, it's very clear to me that my understanding of the community was wrong. Also watching Haas's streams as well. It doesn't mean I don't have disagreements, but I have disagreements of everyone.
This is like,
and I don't think
this
it's
is shit that I tried.
fruitful
This is shit that me and Rev tried to tell you over and over again. You didn't listen.
And you know what? I needed to actually join the community myself and take the time to do it to understand it, right? Obviously, now I have a different position. So, it doesn't mean that, again, it doesn't mean that I agree with everything. Obviously, we have our disagreements on particular topics or whatever. But I understand and agree that geopolitics is the main contradiction, right? And that's where we agree more than any other issue, quite frankly, right? And that's why it is so vital, in my perspective, to defend Haas and the rest of the community against censorship in particular. So that's one of the main reasons I'm standing in solidarity.
So, but you're just doing all this. Oh, I need to fucking do mutual aid in Pittsburgh and all that fucking shit.
Oh no, don't.
Why don't we do something bigger than that?
Like what?
Because I'm one dude and I do not want to become like a. My goal is not for me to become like some grand leader of some major organization. I would rather be involved at a local level.
All right, that was I'm glad you answered my question. I think I got what I wanted to hear about out of that. But then, so then, what is your take on NAFO, anyways? Because the title of the space is "What is NAFO?" So, what do you think NAFO is?
Yes, so I mean, based on the conversations we were having earlier, my perspective on NAFO is that effectively, originally, they were a bunch of gamers who suddenly decided that they were going to get involved in politics connected to Hong Kong and Taiwan. And over time, over the last few years, they went from a more decentralized organization to a much more centralized. There seems to be some sort of CIA, Ukrainian government, British intelligence, some sort of thing that has moved them in this direction to operate the way that they're operating now. I think they're spreading propaganda, obviously. I think that, they're supporting some of the most disgusting things that we've seen in Ukraine, which, I went over a lot of those things, but I'll briefly go over them again. I mean, we're talking about, people getting strapped to poles and tied up, having toxic paint painted on them. A lot of cases, physical abuse, including sexual abuse to these people. Um, Obviously, we're talking about the Azov Battalion in general, the right sector, these literal fascists that the Democratic Party is full on supporting, sending billions of dollars. And the Rhino Republicans are doing the same shit too. Let's be very clear.
And many
It's
of those
really
billions of dollars don't even make it to the front lines due to bureaucratic corruption. So even
absolutely,
not to say that I want it to make it to the front lines, because there's people within the Ukrainian military. I found videos on some of the different telegrams where they took a 16-year-old boy who was primarily a Russian speaker. They dragged him into a basement and they beat him to a bloody pulp because he spoke Russian.
absolutely disgusting. But like, honestly, is not
And
surprising.
it's not
You know,
Wait,
isolated.
Boyburn, where's that one? What's that one? He went to the hospital. No one found him
Yeah,
since.
there's okay, so there is this guy. Let me see if I can find it. I included it in my anti-Ukraine Nazi video. Hold on a second. And basically, he went to a Ukrainian police department in order to get protection from like a mob that was following him. He's like a black immigrant in Ukraine, and they were following him around. And he asked the local police for aid, and the police basically shoved him out of the police station and just sent him into the mob. And then the guy disappeared, and nobody knows where he went after that. He's never been heard from after that. I can find the article.
absolutely disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you do find that article, feel free to share it in the comments with all of the other 900 and whatever NAFO
Also,
comments that appear to
What?
be in here.
let's
900 people commented.
let's I think like because you brought up the point that it's likely that a lot of these individuals are directly affiliated with and or are being useful pawns to like intelligence operations like CIA, NSA, all these other MI6, whatever. You can bring up specific operational programs like Operation Eurodynamics, which was deployed back in 1954 after World War II, where the CIA went out of its way to subvert local populations within Ukraine against each other. And what they did was they took ethnic divides in the Ukrainian community and they emphasized them and harshened them, where those in Western Ukraine who ethnically identify as Polish were being like they were being told in like Ukrainian media that they're distinct and that Russian like Slavic like Ukrainians they're evil and they're trying to undermine Ukraine's sovereignty, they're infiltrators, all this other stuff. So this has been going on for like over 50 years. An entire generation of propaganda has been disseminated amongst like the Ukrainian population in order to create this divide, and it's been taken
Yeah,
advantage
most
of.
definitely.
Yeah.
I think you know, in a lot of ways, you can kind of relate it to what has historically happened in the United States with a lot of other ethnic minorities, not just, you know, the more obvious that people point to, like black folks in the country and how, you know, like they're welfare queens, da da da. But you can also look at the propaganda pushed towards, you know, Irish immigrants and Italian immigrants into the country as well, and how they were propagandized, and you know, to be like they're a threat to your family or your children or whatever. There's a lot of like same tactics that have been used by the United States and the British as well, to, you know, create these ethnic divides. And you know, it's just basically the same tactics that we were using, you know, early on, well, going 100 years ago or so or longer in the United States, and we can kind of relate that what we do abroad, to create these ethnic divisions, to, you know, make it so you can destabilize countries in a lot of ways, right?
Mm.
Hey, I gotta run, but it's been good talking with you all. I just wanted to give people a heads up. So on the Flame of Liberation YouTube channel tomorrow, I'm gonna be releasing discussion that I had with Dr. Dermot Hudson, who's the chairman of the Korean Friendship Association UK. We had a very good discussion in depth on the Juche idea and the truth about the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. So, people, keep an eye out for that tomorrow on the Flame Liberation YouTube channel. Yeah, thanks for everyone joining, and I got to run, but yeah, continue this conversation.
Absolutely, and I'll say that when you share that out, I'll make sure it gets shared out to other folks as well. Regardless of political divisions, multiple different communities have with each other, I want us to kind of start looking at ways that we can kind of build bridges. And I know that's a tall order, asking for a lot of different folks. There's a lot of vendettas, but it's really the only pathway forward if we actually want to build something that can take down the U.S. imperialist, and that's just kind of my
So
perspective. Nick,
I found the article. I linked it in the comments. The man's name is Stanley Tani. He was a student that was going to uni in Ukraine. There's a video in the article of him being pushed out. And to this day, there's like mixed reports. Some people have said that he survived the attack, but he was beaten to a bloody pulp and like almost beaten to death. But then there's other news syndicates saying they're not sure if it was him, because other people that try to reach out to Stanley Tani, like, they get no response from him. So there's no way to corroborate whether or not he actually survived. He just got thrown to the mob and then essentially lynched by like some group of like right sector people in Ukraine.
wow, yeah, that's
And the
incredibly
police
depressing.
and the local
Yeah,
police basically helped him. Yeah.
hey, these stories are like, I mean, it's terrible, but it's a dime a dozen. I mean, you can find a million of these stories about individuals that have been brutalized by Ukrainian Azov battalion and police, and it's absolutely disgusting what the Ukrainian government has been doing, and it's one of those things that, like, you hate to see all this, like, and not just in the context of what's going on, like the Ukrainian government's doing, but it's sad that it had to get to a war like it is. I guess I'm one of those people that early on, as many folks believe that Russia wasn't going to invade Ukraine, and I was wrong, and a lot of us were wrong about that, right? Um, but as much as it needs to get done, it's disgusting that it's gotten to this point. But I mean, you see the Ukrainian government bombing, the Donbass republics, for like 14 years. You see the destruction it's happened, what the Ukrainian government has been doing since this war has gone on, the corruption, obviously, as Zelensky is walking away with who knows how much money from this whole situation. And when ultimately Ukraine falls, we know for a fact that Zelensky is going to have some comfy place somewhere in like Switzerland or some bullshit, where he's going to spend his however much money he has stolen from American taxpayers, and uh, unless the Russian government steps in or some other force, no real justice is going to be served. At the end of the day, like, this man has a lot of resources. It's not hard to get away from Russian authorities if all the best hope we have is for Ukraine to be liberated, and these Azov battalion forces to be ultimately demolished, and a lot of these people that survive, because we know the Russian government has been very kind to a lot of these Ukrainian prisoners, for them to be like re-educated to some capacity, whether that's pushed by the Russian Communist Party, or pushed by Putin's party, or what have you. Some sort of re-education has to happen, like bare minimum, for a lot of these people that have been involved with this. But
Yeah, I don't. You're not trying to imply that like Russia just arbitrarily decided to invade Ukraine one day, right?
no, absolutely not. I mean,
Oh, okay.
it's very clear that NATO, the United States, the British intelligence agency, for going on for decades has been just trying to, farther eradicate Russia. Obviously there was the collapse of the Soviet Union, and then as soon as Putin took over and the country started booming back in the right direction, you saw the West violate, their gentleman's agreement or whatever you want to call that, and expanding NATO farther and farther west, or farther and farther east, rather. And the Russian government, they have just been operating in a way that is protective in their nature. They're trying to protect their own interests. They're trying to protect their own people. They're trying to deal with U.S. imperialism in general. So, it like, I don't blame the Russian government. It's sad that there just was no other way. The imperialists gave no other option but for Russia to inevitably
They
invade.
were basically backed into a corner, and they've been trying to do this thing where politically they're waging war on multiple fronts. They're waging war in a militaristic sense and also in a political sense. And this is something that's been pointed out to me by other people in RTSG. But basically, it's like this: the reason why they're not doing a full committal of like a full frontal assault on Ukraine is because they're not sure if they have the full support of the public. But I think that after the special operation was commenced by the Russian Federation, Putin's approval ratings went up. So I don't think if they fully, I don't know if they, I don't really believe that if they fully committed to the special operation, that they would lose public support in their own country. I think they would probably gain more support, because what they're doing right now is they're ceding territories, and they're losing territories gained in order to like try to walk this tightrope. You know what I mean? And it's, I don't know. It's probably easy to say, like, me sitting in my apartment, like on Twitter, like saying like this type of stuff. I'm not in this type of like high tension position of leadership where I have to like make these shot calls. But from the outside looking in, it just seems like they could like, I don't know, they could really put the lid on this. They could really put the lid on this sooner.
So Yankee Tankie and Void, what do you think that we can do as Americans living within the empire to stop or to help out in this situation and change the
We need right now. I do have like a I think right now you're seeing some of the most vocal advocates of like an anti-imperialist type of stance are coming from like Trump supporters and MAGA people who are pro-Russia and pro-Putin, or just people that just say like it's none of our business, we need to get out of there. Like, why are we spending billions upon billions of dollars that we could be using like here back at home? And I think that's a really solid position, and those are the types of people that we need to be reaching out to. Those are the types of people that we need to let them know that we hear them, and we need to tap into that and grow those types of voices. We need to amplify those types of voices and let them know, like, we're on their side. You know what I mean?
I
Yeah,
agree with you. We
I
also have to
agree.
reach like a higher point because a lot of those same people were very hardcore against, what's going on with Russia, and they're, maybe for us on Russia. They're like hardcore against China.
Yeah,
And
I've noticed that like there is a lot of mega folks that are still hardcore against China, and I think that's important to not just in online spaces, but in your daily interactions with Trump people, because we all know Trump people, we all know MAGA supporters, almost no matter where you are in the country, right? It's important to kind of just like explain to them, that China is not our enemy, and bring it back to, how Russia and Putin are not our enemy as American workers in this country. Likewise, is the situation with China and Xi Jinping, and emphasize, in a lot of ways, they're fighting the deep state, that because that's their perspective on what they view as the ruling class, right? Is it's the deep state, you know, it's the World Economic Forum, and emphasize that to them, like, you know, the people that are fighting the deep state and the World Economic Forum, they are Xi Jinping in China. They are just like, you know, with Vladimir Putin and Russia, and just kind of, it's all about linking those things in conversations. Um, as you're trying to, you know, bring them towards the right direction so they understand what the real enemies are. You know, I that's what I've been trying to do with people I interact with. um, Obviously the next level is for us to actually link programs and provide on some material basis at some point, but obviously we're just not at that point yet.
But
Which
that's where I'd like to encourage you, Yankee Tankie. I think we are at that point. You know, the China has offered us to join the Belt and Road Initiative, and we have to talk about what these global infrastructure possibilities are to where we could actually cooperate. You know, it's not enough that we just say, "Oh yeah, China and Xi Jinping are fighting against the World Economic Forum." You know, okay, so what are we actually proposing anything to build up instead of that? And you know, I think that that's where the World Land Bridge comes in. So I would encourage
Mhm,
you to think more about the Belt and Road Initiative and the
mhm,
World Land Bridge and
mhm.
how we can build that paradigm.
Well, no, I definitely agree with in the context of advocating for policy and things like that. I'm more speaking in the terms of us obtaining political power in that regard, right? You talked about running for office as communists. I think that's generally a good idea. You know, I still, you know, like I have a different position than I did when I first was interacting with your community, with 2036 and everything. My hope is that you guys are successful at this point. I'm not 100% convinced you guys will be, but I'm much more convinced now than I was going back even like 6 months ago. You know, because there has been some visual shifts with how the CPUSA has been operating, and that can only be explained with some of y'all's efforts to try to regain control of the CPUSA. You know, so, you know, I hope that we can actually create a political engine or take over a political engine or whatever, so we can actually be able to argue for these policies from a basis of we actually having political power, instead of it just being entirely reliant on online information and in real life conversations that we have with these folks. You know, because that is one of the things that's holding us back in a lot of ways. We don't have a political engine to actually achieve our goals in a lot of ways. So, you know, all the luck to you guys to 2036. They will never accept me in CPUSA, so I can't join without there being an obvious issue about who the fuck I am, because these people have written articles about my existence, as well as the existence of other folks that were part of the CPI during the same time. If you all are not familiar with the story, we were invited by another member of the CPI that happened to be part of the New York City YCL, their youth league in the CPUSA, if you're not familiar. And we went over and we tried to have a conversation with these folks. They were very like antagonistic towards us. They were, you know, like calling us Duganist or whatever. And yeah, they just were completely uninterested in talking to us. We politely left and all that stuff. But then they tried to say that we were trying to infiltrate the CPUSA building to take it over, and a bunch of other ridiculous accusations. You know, so there's been a long time, if you're not familiar, a long time aggression, like against CPUSA and the former Center for Political Innovation. And, you know, these people know who I am. They know who my face is. A lot of their members have talked to me in person. So they, you know, they've seen who I am. So I can't do the maneuvers, but I can at least say that I support you guys trying to, take over the CPUSA so we can have a political engine. Because without a political engine, we can reach out to all these folks on an individual basis and through online content and streaming and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, though, I know Haas agrees with me. Without us having a political engine, we're talking to in the winds in some ways. I don't know if anyone kind of has any input on based on what I just said there. Negative. Okay. Well, the two requests I have here, I'm just going to boot you guys because you are NAFA motherfuckers. You have no value to put in this conversation. You're like 90% of the reason why Haas is no longer on Twitter. So you guys don't get the right to speak because you say that Haas doesn't get the right to speak. So simple as that. With that being said, though, this conversation's gone on for about 2 hours here. There's been a lot of great input. I just kind of want to end on this note, unless someone else would like to speak or what have you. No, okay. Well, let me just say that I appreciate everyone that has come into this conversation. You guys have been very great contributing your perspectives on the whole Ukraine thing. Obviously, NAFO, you guys are soon to be ultimately irrelevant. Ryan Basha, let me just look at who you are. Yeah, you're followed by a lot of cool people. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna let you speak real quick. See if you have any. Oh, the request is gone. Never mind. Oh wait, nope, it's back. Nope, it's not. It's some other Ukrainian flag. But yeah, I think that going forward from here, regardless of how we feel about trying to wage some sort of propaganda war against these NATO motherfuckers or whatever, we can all agree that at the end of the day, these people are not speaking. Oh, you're back. All right, I'm gonna approve that real quick. Brian, how are you doing today? Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone here before we close out here? Okay, it doesn't seem like you're speaking.
Hello,
give one
King.
more
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Brian. How are you doing?
Yeah, how you do? I just wanted to just simply say, and I'm not going to take too much time. We know, at least from my standpoint, I've been associated with Mr. Lyndon LaRouche, okay? So I want to make it very simple, and I want to make it very, very clear that LaRouche has fought this empire for a very long time. So I kind of disagree with you that there is no such thing as a political organization that's battling this empire. It does exist.
That point.
Okay, so I just want to say that. Okay, so it does exist. Okay, the political movement does exist with solutions.
I would agree that there is a small amount of like organizations that are they exist that are against the imperialist order. My point is that for communists in particular, there is really no political engine. That's just we have allies, but we don't have an engine for ourselves. And if our goal is to ultimately, effectively move this country in the direction of communism and not just general progress, which I will admit that the Schiller's Institute does advocate for at least general progress. It just doesn't go as far as other communist MLs might agree with, I guess, so to speak.
It's fine because I know we can agree on things that need to be done. I agree, but the problem is right now is that there's a collapse, and my issue with look, the problem is you have to get away from idealism. And look, again, I don't want to take too much time. I know that you're ending it. I just want to make it very simple, very, very clear. The American Revolution is strictly on the principle of progress. The problem here is that there needs to be a change in mode, in the method to which people have to think. The problem here is the thoughts that people have. In other words, how do you measure progress? And I don't want to, I know you're ending the stream, but I just want to make it very, very clear. The method to which progress succeeds, or shall we say, the method, it has everything to do with the discussion of economy or physical economy. Mr. LaRouche has always presented that in a very, shall we say, mode of a rigorous process. But again, the process of discussion of that method, which is based on science, has never, in a way, has to be discussed. So as long as people don't discuss it, obviously you're gonna have this difficulty of in a way uniting and on a principle, though, the process of a principle. Okay, so I just want to make that very, very clear.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree that we're going to have to build coalitions with people we agree with, which is one of the things that I.
Dude, enough with the bill coalitions, man, we get it, but are you gonna study LaRouche, man? Here's a quote from Sergei Glaziev just 2 days ago on Lyndon LaRouche's 100th birthday and on the death of the Queen. Lyndon LaRouche turned out to be right. Today we rely on his work, his writings, and composing proposals for a rapid transition to a new world economic paradigm. The ruling financial oligarchy is losing the hybrid world war they started against all mankind.
I'm not
So
to
you're
clarify.
kind of acting like LaRouche is just some sort of little cult or something that we can start a
No, I'm not
coalition with.
arguing that.
No, it's the answer for the problems that we're facing today.
I view it
And
as in
so are you
what
gonna join the train?
one of the things I argue is read everything and adhere to nothing. So what our goals is work with anyone that actually wants progress, and obviously the Schiller's Institute wants progress. I do not feel a need, just like I don't feel a need to outright declare myself, a mecha tanky or whatever, right? I don't feel an outright need to, adapt everything to the Schiller's Institute with my perspective, but I think it makes sense to work with these folks. I think it makes sense to read what Lyndon LaRouche has read, regardless of how some opinions of other folks that I work with might feel about me reading those materials, just like I have read some of the material from Dugan as well. I think it's important to understand the perspectives of different folks, regardless if we agree with them or not entirely. That's not the point. I'm never going to agree with everyone entirely, anyhow. But look, there's obviously an olive branch out to both the Schiller's Institute and the infrared community to work with them in ways that we can actually achieve communism in the United States. And
Okay, well let me ask you this: what do you mean by work with them? Because what do you want to work on? What is it that you're trying to build? And don't just say, oh, some fighting against imperialism. Give me an actual
oh, okay. So
step.
another other thing other than anti-imperialist struggle, which I think is the main contradiction, but
No, I mean, how are you actually going to do that? You could say you're anti-imperialist and you could start little mutual aid groups or whatever, but what are you actually doing to build the new paradigm?
well, at this time there isn't really a engine for me to do that with.
Yes, there is. We're telling you right now. Join the LaRouche movement.
That's afraid that's just
Come to the infrared
I
conference.
do not. Well, I mean, first of all, I will never be able to afford to go to the infrared conference. But I will definitely support you guys and promote it to a certain capacity. Share your the the event flyers and things of that nature. I'm more than willing to physically put them around Pittsburgh as well. But with that being said, I do not want to join any organization at this time. The engine that I want to work with does not exist yet, and that's just, I will work with the people from the outside, promote infrastructure that you guys are promoting, like the World Land Bridge, for example. I will definitely keep supporting the infrared community in the context of both anti-imperialism. I do like the idea of lower tax rates, which is some of the things that you guys advocate for. Lower the tax burden on the working class in the country. There's definitely policy things that I agree with, and hopefully at some point, Lego pieces will be put together for another organization that's more aligned with what I'm trying to be a part of, basically. And all these organizations can work in a coalition. That's what I'm fighting for. To the disappointment of many, and I guess for some people, the pleasure of many. But that's just where I stand, and I'm not going to move my position just because some folks that I have a lot in common with want me to move it in that direction. So,
But I think you're having a decent redemption arc, Mr. Yankee Tankie. You're getting better, but you need to listen to some of the ideas of the Schiller Institute more, because these are actually, if you're really against imperialism, we have to build the world land bridge, bro. We have to make a new Bretton Woods. But we don't have to
Yeah.
call it necessarily that, but and you could see the influence that these ideas have in Russia and China, and it's time to step up to
I
a new
think that's
paradigm, bro.
undeniable. I think it's undeniable that you guys have had an influence in Russia and China, even to some capacity in Brazil as well. I do think the Schiller Institute has had a good influence on geopolitics, and that's undeniable. It just doesn't mean I'm ready to work within an organization that we just that there would inevitably be conflicts that I would not want to be being within an organization that I have that many ideological disagreements with, and also, to be frank, I have a hard time listening to Plato. Like I get it that he's an important. Many Greek philosophers are important to the ideology of LaRouche, but I just have a hard time sitting through that kind of stuff. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, can I say something then?
Of course.
Okay, so that's the problem right there. The method to which look, I did not join Lyndon LaRouche, right, without me going through the agony process of actually finding out how freaking wrong I was. Any discovery, like especially in your case, you have to rigorously take your ideology through the course of, shall we say, truth or false. In other words, you have to go through it. All right, that's all. That's I mean, there is no other way to figure out if what you preach is true or false without the Platonic Socratic method. That's the honest goddamn truth. I can only say this because from my experience with the LaRouche movement, to discover how wrong, first of all, how wrong you are. First of all, okay, this is why people have such a huge problem with Platonic methods or Socratic methods. It's because they don't want to be proven wrong. In other words, you're the one that's going to make that decision. Nobody else can make it, but you're the one that has to make it. That's a breakthrough. Right? So that's why a lot of people may not like Linda LaRouche, because that all the time, I suppose, and with with other great minds, shall we say. Like, in other words, you have to be proven wrong in order first to make the step that you apparently don't have yet to discover your power. In other words, remember what Socrates, or shall we say through Plato, states. You know, you have to admit that you don't know. Yeah.
Well,
So
I mean,
yeah,
in my perspective, in the context of the dialect, we already have a methodology to prove things either false or true through, the dialect, right? So for me, I'm not against reading some of the works to a limited capacity. My issue is just that it's I'm not okay. If it's not clearly obvious, I'm not the most intelligent person in the world. It took me 10 years to understand communism. I'm not ready for it. Like, it's as simple as that, right? Um, so I would rather just focus on what I do know at this time and try to learn with hands-on kind of like organizing and focus my theory research more on uh, you know uh, Marx, Engels, Hegel to a certain capacity, Lenin, Mao, just because there's so much that I do not know, even about those, for lack of better terms, idols, so to speak. I need to, I need to really understand my own ideology in its entirety, both materially and in the context of theory, before I'm ready to start walking down reading every single other philosophy. I used to be a libertarian back in the day, right? And I was very hooked to Ayn Rand. I was very hooked onto um, you know uh, people that were involved in the New Age atheist movement, like Sam Harris. I was from a completely different political spectrum than I am in at this point, right? Long time weed myself off of that effectively.
Yankee Tankie, have you ever been in a group where you read Plato?
Was I ever in a group that what?
Have you ever read Plato in a group? It's completely different than reading it as an individual. Have you ever read it in a group?
Uh, no, but I've sat down and listened to some of the. I forget if they were live streamed or just videos that some of your folks have put out back when I was in the CPI, and I was still trying to understand Marxism at that point. So most of that stuff kind of just
Have
flew
you
over my
not
head.
seen Bacon's video that you can't even understand communism if you haven't first read Plato and Aristotle?
No, and I would say that, it is only within the last like 3 months that I really ever sat down and watched one of Haas's streams. So,
My friend, you need to. These are the Western classics. You need to read, my friend. You need to read the dialogues.
I mean, I can tell you what I have read in the context of, like, this is some of the stuff that you guys talk about. I've read the oh gosh, why can't I think of it at this moment? Gosh, damn it. The Why am I drawing on the guy's name? He was the basically the
Schiller?
inspiration. No, not Schiller. It was the inspiration for the American Revolution in a lot of different ways. Why?
Leibniz?
No. He's someone that, and I know your community isn't a big fan of him, but someone that Red Illuminati talked about a lot. Oh gosh, I can't remember his freaking
Yankee
name right now.
Tankie, why are you a Pat Sock Den, bro?
Oh, I'm not a Patsock. I changed. Actually, it was Haas that convinced me to not be a Patsock anymore. But the main reason I used to be a Patsock was because of the influence of Caleb. I mean, he was arguing for patriotic socialism. It was my first introduction to a form of communism, because most of my experience prior were to like some fringe Maoists that, you know, worse people, way worse than Jason Unruh. Like we're talking like I don't even know what the hell their names were. But I was a progressive at this point, and they just they were attacking me so much that I lost interest in communism for a period of time until I came across Caleb, and his whole city building perspective, the talking about patriotic socialism, and talking about William Z. Foster and Eugene Debs and all that stuff, kind of like was the beginning of the opening up for me to communism in the first place, because I always viewed communism, ironically, just as Haas talks about, where it's just a bunch of like Antifa leftist thugs, basically, right? And I wasn't in favor of just burning everything down. I actually wanted to rebuild my country and have like a certain sense of pride about it. Excuse me. But as time went on, after the falling out of the CPI and all that shit, listening to Haas kind of showed me that, uh, calling yourself a patriotic socialist in the first place is nonsense, because communists are supposed to be, patriotic for the land and the people in the first place, right? Like it's an unnecessary single fire. You do it based on what you're fighting for and what you're fighting against. It has nothing to do with waving a flag around or whatever. Which that was, I think, in a lot of ways, it was the symbolism for me that really drew me in some ways, because I've problems that I've always had with imperialists at some point or another. I've always kind of viewed, this is the country that I'm born in. I love like my people, so to speak, even though the government itself has had a lot of problems. I was idealistic towards liberalism to a certain capacity, where I had like this like super chauvinistic perspective on what the United States was supposed to be. The idea that the United States was supposed to be the place that you could go to the better your life and to be free or whatever. Which certain senses of that could be true in theory if our government operated that way, but effectively it was rooted in national chauvinism. It was rooted in a very propagandist imperialist perspective that over time I've just realized was wrong. And there's no reason for the symbology of the American flag. It's a completely unnecessary trope that doesn't really actually help the goals of what we're trying to achieve.
I don't know, Yankee Tankie. You're gonna. I don't know. Respectfully, I still think we need to send you to re-education camp.
And you know what? That's fine. If that's how you feel about me. But at the
You
end of
need
the
to stay
day,
away from your phone, man. You need to put your phone in like a locker, lock it up, and go away for 6 hours and read Yankee Tankie. It's not normal that you can't sit down and read Plato. You need to be able to do that, Yankee Tankie. Increase
I,
increase your attention span. Go
you know
read.
what? I would rather read it by myself than read it in a group. Frankly.
Well, the point is you need to read it, Yankee Tankie, by any means necessary. Your redemption arc can be completed if you just read Plato and LaRouche. Eventually, you can start with Plato.
Eventually, I will get around to reading Plato, but it's not my number one priority right now. If you don't realize, I'm living in an abandoned house that doesn't have electricity or running water, so I kind of have to prioritize some other things first.
You're holding the space for NAFO trolls, my friend. It could be better spent reading Plato.
uh no, actually, I mean, because this is actually helping my channel. There's a rhyme and a reason I'm doing this. So yes, I could be reading Plato, but I could also be reading Karl Marx. I could be reading Frederick Engels or Vladimir Lenin.
You won't understand Marx or Frederick Engels truly until you've read Plato.
Maybe, but I'm going to start with actually finishing what I need to read to
You
pretend
need to
even
read
that I
Plato.
understand. I'll read Plato when I get around to Plato. But with that being said, it's 12 o'clock at night. I think it is a good time to end this space in general. You know my perspective. I know your perspective. We'll just have to agree to disagree for this period of time. We have so many things that we agree upon that I feel that this contradiction isn't necessarily the most fruitful thing between our communities to prioritize at this moment. We have to attain political power. So, best of luck to the Schillers Institute of everything they're doing. Best of luck to the infrared community with 2036. And best of luck for everyone else that is trying to do something else. Hopefully, we can build a coalition together and change this country. And, if you want to throw me in a re-education camp when you're done with that, go right ahead. The goal has already been achieved by that point. So,
Yankee Tankie, you're so hilarious, bro.
hey, I mean, I am kind of a jokester. I'm a silly dude. But with that all being said, thank you everyone for joining the space. And I hope that at the very least, this is an eye-opening moment for maybe some of these NAFO people. And if it wasn't, which it probably wasn't, they can keep fucking